The story that a lot of people are looking at and that may make Donald Trump nervous. His longtime lawyer, Michael Cohen, splitting with his own legal team right in the middle of the white-hot pressure of this federal probe. Now, Cohen is, of course, facing a deadline on Friday for the review of attorney-client privilege materials, and those relate to the documents seized by the FBI in the dramatic raids on his home and office and hotel in April. So here is what we know tonight. Number one, the plan is for Michael Cohen to split with his current legal team. That would be his first choice by definition, and plans to hire new lawyers. The break reportedly over Cohen's legal bills. We've seen reports that this investigation, and we've seen this with other defendants and potential defendants, which is what he would be, have had a lot of financial strain. Cohen recently putting up his multi-million-dollar Park Avenue home as collateral against certain bank debts. And I can also tell you something very important about this story, and we're going to get into it with some very knowledgeable guests. Historically, Michael Cohen has gotten help with the legal fees in the Russia probe from the Trump campaign. And I don't mean a small amount of money either. Over $200,000 for his legal fees from the campaign, again, with the ongoing Russia probes. The last payment that we know of, which may not be the last payment ever, was in January, and I should note for precision, that was, of course, before this FBI raid. So here's the big question on everyone's mind tonight, and it is almost certainly on the minds of people in the White House, according to our reporting. Why is Michael Cohen changing lawyers? Is it because he is considering doing something that Donald Trump would never pay for? Is he considering flipping? That's the question. As always, I want to be clear about what we know, because the answer could also be no. He may be switching lawyers for other reasons, I should say. NBC has learned that at this hour, there has not been formal talks with federal prosecutors involved in this case. That would be, of course, a preliminary step if you were ever getting towards what we colloquially call flipping, towards getting some kind of deal. Now, Cohen's new lawyers will have to play catch-up when they come on board. They're going to confront these big questions about loyalty to the most famous client in the world.
I'll do anything to protect Mr. Trump, the family. Fortunately, Mr. Trump has a significant number of people. I'd like to keep myself in that little circle of extremely loyal people.
He does.
And we will do what it's necessary to protect him and the office of the presidency.
I am joined by a man who has sat and faced down Mueller's investigators, former Trump campaign aide Sam Nunberg. He also knows Michael Cohen and has worked alongside him in the early days of that campaign. Former federal prosecutor Seth Waxman, who has a keen understanding of how these kind of deals could come together. And Guy Lewis, who may be the most hooked up. He has worked with, get this, Bob Mueller, James Comey, and Rod Rosenstein, all at the DOJ. I literally don't know where to start. So I'll start with you, Guy. How do you read this legal changeup?
Well, I got to think, Ari, that the president and his lawyers are sitting down, maybe as we speak, discussing this very question. I mean, take a step back and look what's going on. They have raided Cohen's home, office. They have seized documents. I mean, literally, the world is falling in on this guy. And remember, the exact same standard that was used to search all these places is basically the same kind of standard that a grand jury would use to indict Cohen. So know that it's coming. So the question becomes, knowing this train is coming at me at 100 miles an hour, what do? I either cooperate or, frankly, I fight it till the bitter end, which is what we heard in the clip that you just played.
Well, and if there is a train, it is a train that can only slam into Michael Cohen's legal body, if you will, if there is sufficient evidence of crimes. This is very serious, and these prosecutors in the Southern District, as well as whatever Mueller originally dug up, Sam, they don't just make stuff up. You said that wasn't your experience with them. You also said early on, when we talked about this, and as I say, you're one of the few people who's been in these rooms, that you were worried about Michael. Take a look.
I worry about Michael. I'm not going to say Michael's going to lie. I worry about Michael. Michael Cohen got screwed out. Got screwed the most I've ever saw by anyone, by Donald Trump.
Well, he certainly did. Michael was walking around with a big chip on his shoulder. He thought it was Steve Bannon and Reince Priebus that forced him out of not getting a job, when in fact, I subsequently have learned that it was Jared. And not only that, but they made him leave the Trump Organization. Some of it stemmed from the Daily Beast interview that you had covered, and subsequent other issues where Michael actually gave then President-elect Trump good counsel of not suggesting that perhaps his son-in-law and his daughter shouldn't enter the White House. Michael, whether you like us or not, whether you like Donald Trump or not, in all this, Michael's a very tragic figure. I don't know what they're investigating per se. I do know, and I've said this to you, they asked me about all businesses that I had heard of when I was there. It was very weird to me. I didn't necessarily know that was under, I guess anything's under this Rosenstein mandate, right?
But Mueller's investigators are asking you about the way the Trump Organization ran, which could implicate Michael.
And they were asking me about Michael's other businesses. Michael operated businesses.
Right.
Michael was...
The taxi business?
Well, I brought up that I had heard, Michael had a taxi business. I had heard other things that were basically public. And luckily for me, in hindsight, besides getting fired very early from this campaign, I stayed out of the business elements of the Trump Organization. It wasn't my purview.
You know, Michael, can you help us understand why someone who lives in a multi-million-dollar Park Avenue condo, who rolls around in the Trump lifestyle, would apparently be running out of money the moment he has big bills?
Well, I think when I saw with the Stormy Daniels payment that he had to take out a loan, I believe, Ari, if I'm saying this correctly, he took out a loan, essentially a bridge loan, to make that payment. It's hard. I don't know how cash rich he is. He's sort of a real estate businessman himself, and a lot of it is floating debts. Not as big as Jared Kushner's, but so that was. I think that's one of the reasons, and he invests a lot in properties across the city. I don't know his finances.
You find it right. You're not. I'm not saying you're his banker,
right.
But based on your knowledge of the kind of business he did, and you know him in a way many people do not, it doesn't surprise you that he may not have enough cash on hand to deal with the crushing legal fees.
No, it doesn't surprise me, because these legal fees, especially if he has to go over all these document reviews, they add up. Look, the RNC paid over $500,000 that we know about for Hope Hicks legal fees, and they've paid, I assume, for Brad Pascal's. I assume they've paid for others that we're going to know, and they're very selective about that, Ari, by the way, because they never gave Caputo a cent.
Well, that's very interesting, Seth. Let's look on screen here at some of the ways the money has supported people, some of whom ended up cooperating. Political reporting, there was this legal defense fund set up for Mike Flynn independently. Friends of Manafort trying to support him. Roger Stone crowdfunding. Caputo, as Sam was just mentioning, was saying they got hundreds of thousands in separate donations. It may surprise some viewers that all these tough guys with all their tough talk, and I've been on the other end of some of the phone calls, at the end of the day, they don't even have enough money to get through the early, potentially, I want to say carefully, potentially pre-indictment phase of this legal fight?
Yeah, I mean, these are expensive endeavors. I mean, the lawyers that are working for Michael Cohen and these other individuals are high-priced lawyers working in the biggest city in the world, if not the country, rather. And they're going to chew up and go through that burn rate really quickly. Now, whether this is a dispute with his lawyers over the way the defense was being mounted, or a fee dispute, or on the other hand, cooperation, we don't quite know. But if it's on the cooperation side, this is something that we, as a former prosecutor, we used to call the snowball effect. You start to get one or two cooperators on your side, you start to feel pretty good. You get to 4, 5, and 6 cooperators, you start to get that snowball rolling down the hill, and you start to feel really good, kind of catching up everybody else, and finally that snowball landed on your target's head at the bottom of the hill. So, I also find it interesting that we're in this week of critical mass for Paul Manafort. He's got to be sweating it a little bit as well, because Michael Cohen may have information about him as well. So this is a good week, or a good day for the prosecution if Michael Cohen is getting closer to flipping.
And Guy, I don't know if you've heard the term messy. People talk about things can get too messy. That is Donald Trump's view, according to New York Times reporting here today. Trump himself telling people he's angry at Cohen over the messiness of the situation. He's worried if he pushes Cohen away too hard, it could increase the likelihood that Cohen will offer information to the government. You know what's wild about that leak, Guy? It makes it sound, if the sourcing is correct, like an admission that there is negative information about Trump that Cohen has that he could provide to a criminal investigation. Why someone would leak that, I don't know. But if Trump didn't do anything wrong, he's got nothing to fear about Cohen providing, quote-unquote, information.
Ari, you're exactly right. And Seth is right on point. We used to see, as prosecutors, And we would be tacit. We would participate in this knowing that it wasn't 100% accurate when we wanted the message to go out there that there was some other reason that they were either changing lawyers or, frankly, had gone in and had a sealed hearing in federal court. It was because the cooperation, the plea agreement, everything was unfolding in order to do this outside the public's ability to see and review what was going on. In this case, it's going to be virtually impossible. But look, just because they say that there is a fee dispute doesn't mean necessarily that's the only reason why that they're changing lawyers.
What would the other reason be?
Well, they're bringing in somebody, frankly, who may have a very good relationship with the Southern District of Florida, who worked in the office recently, who knows these prosecutors.
But here's the thing
in
about
particular.
that. Michael Cohen has been a lawyer in New York, or a fixer, or whatever he says he is, for a long time. So if your life is on the line, your money's on the line, your family potentially not seeing you if you are charged, wouldn't you want to get that choice right the first time?
Well, obviously you want to. But equally true, Ari, it may be that the McDermott Will lawyers, great lawyers, by the way, terrific law firm, have sat down and read him the Riot Act and said, look it, the evidence is overwhelming. You're being, you're going to be destroyed.
Just to be crystal clear,
the only thing we can do is.
Are you suggesting that a different theory of the case, that they are so hard pushing him to cooperate, he doesn't want to do that he wants to switch counsel?
Listen, you heard the interview that the clip that you just played. He's a tough guy. I mean, he's told the federal prosecutors basically to go stick it.
Yeah.
So it may very well be that he's telling the McDermott Will lawyers the same thing.
Right. Hey, I listened to all the clips we played during the show.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it may be that he's told them that, look, I want somebody who's going to go in and fight this thing literally to the death. Well, and that may be where we are.
You, as always, give us an extra nuance, whether people like that outcome or not. You're pointing out that there's so much we don't know tonight that over-interpreting the legal change is perilous, because it could be something in that direction as well. Fascinating either way that a New York lawyer seems to be wanting to switch horses midstream, etc. I think I'm mixing metaphors, right, Sam. But let me play for you something Donald Trump said that kicked this all off long before the Stormy Avenatti of it all and the Mueller of it all and the Southern District of it all had all converged. Take a look at this moment.
Do you know about the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels? Then why did Michael Cohen make it if there was no truth around payment?
Well, you have to ask Michael Cohen. Michael's my attorney, and you'll have to ask Michael.
Michael Cohen's office was raided in days leading us up to tonight's news. Honestly, was that the dumbest thing Donald Trump has done this year?
No. I'll tell you, he got
top 5?
It's up there. But the reason is that he, once he had Rudy come out and clean that up, and that's what Rudy's been doing. You know, remember, we all thought, or a lot of us thought, I didn't necessarily believe that Rudy was doing this terrible job. I was happy as a Trump person to see somebody getting on TV, finally defending him.
Why have Rudy clean up a mess you made on Air Force One? Why tell the world, and Mueller might have been listening, ask Michael Cohen?
Well, what I would say is Rudy then came out, right, and he tells Sean Hannity, if you watch this interview, you've played it, and I even think that Sean had no idea, and he said, yeah, Michael made the payment, and we had a way to pay him, and he was on retainer, and
you've been around Donald Trump. He doesn't admit mistakes, but he does pivot and spin and walk away from things he said. Would he do that moment over again, knowing what he knows tonight?
Well, he'll never admit the mistake itself. What he thinks now is that it's cleaned up. What was very interesting about the New York Times article you were referencing is that ultimately, and he was very close to publicly breaking away from Michael.
Right.
And I had warned them in the press not to do that. Michael's a critical figure to them.
You warned them that would be against their interest.
To be 100% against their interest. I would tell you.
Are you suggesting, you say warn them through the press, are you suggesting that you do media appearances to speak to the White House and Donald Trump?
Well, I have. I said my analysis was that would be very, very bad for the president to turn his back publicly.
I just think
him.
You know I keep it 100 with you.
Right. Well,
you know I keep it 100 with you.
Yes.
You know that.
Yeah.
I think it is so odd that a lot of you Trump guys communicate to each other through television and admit that you're doing it through television.
Oh, well, you get the president to watch, right? He's watching. Trust me, he watches your show. By the way, Mueller watches your show, the special counsel. I got to be very careful too. I get follow-ups from them
About things you say or hear.
Correct. Yeah.
It's an interesting time. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.